So, amidst all that is broken and hurting in our country, it really is a pleasure to share with you something about Unitarian Universalism that truly inspires me. So, in our time together, I'm going to tell you three stories. First, my journey of conversion as someone who had a vague sense of what UUSC was, to someone who believes it's one of the most important things we're doing collectively as Unitarian Universalists right now. Second, I'm going to tell you a remarkable story about something that bloomed from UUSC's way of working in partnership. And third, I'm going to tell you a story that I hope will include you. So, first, me. I've been a UU for a long time now. I discovered our faith when I was in college in the mid 1990s, and I was ordained to our ministry in 2002. I knew about UUSC from its annual fundraiser, Guest at Your Table, from working in religious education in a number of congregations. But my understanding was vague and my support was, well, theoretical. In the spring of 2024, that all changed. But just out of curiosity, how many of you have heard about UUSC? Would you just raise a hand in the room so I can get a sense? Okay, quite a few of you. Thank you. Yeah, great. So in the spring of 2024, I was in Germany on sabbatical. I was a guest researcher there. And it was that good fortune that allowed me to join a board trip of UUSC board members to visit some of their partner organizations in Poland, groups that were helping with refugees from fleeing Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. So before we even traveled together, UUSD staff led us through some learning sessions over Zoom. There was background and context to learn, considerations of power and privilege, covenant building and caucusing, and some self-reflection on the ways the potential impact of the firsthand stories we would be hearing might intersect with our own various identities. The sessions were real and tender and thoughtfully carried out, and to be honest, I was already impressed. My train then pulled into a station in Warsaw, and I walked the few blocks to our hotel. It was old and beautiful, as so many of the buildings in that part of the world are. And then I found the conference room where we would be having our sessions and our meals. And I was really struck by the depth and integrity of the people that I met who were gathered there already. Our first partner visit was in Warsaw to a community center created by Foundations Towards Dialogue, which was an organization that was founded by two women who were committed to the rights of the Roma people living in Poland and changing Polish society through education. The community center was alive with women and children of all ages, voices bubbling, food being prepared, kids playing in the yard. We didn't share a common language with anyone, or at least most of the women and children, but we exchanged warm, familiar glances and smiles and of hello and welcome. The Roma people are a transnational nation with over 100 different dialects. Originally from India, they've experienced centuries of persecution in Europe. And because they are considered by governments to be a, quote, nomadic people, they're often not afforded refugee status and denied access to shelters and other services. After Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Foundations Towards Dialogue was able to pivot quickly to create this Roma Poland Ukraine Day Center, offering psychological support, legal aid, mentoring, and education. The feeling of love and community in that place was palpable. They told us something we would hear again and again. From the beginning, they said, you listened to us. You paid attention to us. You helped us get what we needed. And you didn't make us fill out 100 pages of forms that would take us away from our work. Another group routinely turned away from shelters in Poland after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine were refugees of African descent. Our visit to the Alliance for Black Justice Poland was deeply moving. We walked into a large meeting hall. They'd set out water and snacks for us to greet us on our arrival. The coalition formed to respond to needs such as providing transport from the border areas to cities throughout Poland, legal advice, help with accessing safe accommodation, healthcare, and other basic services. As mass evacuations from the border ended, Black Justice Poland's work shifted to longer-term support for Black, African, and Afro descent people who decided to stay in Poland. UUSC board members of African descent and others from the global majority spoke with our hosts as the white people in our group silently held space and witnessed the exchange. Across continents, we heard similar stories of discrimination, systemic oppression, and police violence. One of the leaders of Black Justice Poland spoke directly to UUSC's board about their funding approach as a partnership. "It's so unusual," he said. "It's a different practice than we've experienced from other funders. It's part of why we are so excited to meet you today." We met other partners as well, like Martinka, which provides holistic services to women fleeing Ukraine, many fleeing domestic violence and trafficking. At the time of our visit, they had an annual budget of $250,000, supporting 8 team members, fielding up to 10 calls a day, sometimes working with women anonymously for safety as they assumed new identities in Poland. There was really this moment where men could not leave Poland, but women could. I'm sorry, Ukraine. Men couldn't leave Ukraine, but women could. And so many women took the opportunity to flee situations of domestic violence. So Martinka also educates women around topics that were taboo in Ukrainian society, like gender fluidity, LGBT equality, abortion, and sexual education. The founder told us that many funders had already left the region, even by then, because it was no longer, quote, flashy. "You," she said, "are different. You make a transparent commitment up front and you stick with it. Plus," she said, "you're willing to fund a small group like us who talks about things that no one else does." By the end of the trip, I was blown away by the consistency of this refrain. "You're different from other funders. You listen to us. You respect us. You help us get what we want help with." I'm not sure I had ever felt so proud to be a Unitarian Universalist. UUSC has developed a way of working relationally and nimbly, identifying the people and grassroots groups at the intersections of their funding priorities: climate justice, migration solidarity, humanitarian crisis response, and democracy and protecting civil liberties, including gender justice. UUSC is often able to get funding to folks with marginalized identities whom the larger funders will not support. Many times, UUSC is a group's very first funder. Depending on what a partner asks for, UUSC also provides advocacy from UUSC members, research, justice education, technical assistance, strategic communications, and gathering people by funding convenings. UUSC currently works with over 70 partners in 20 countries, including the US, and has 47 full-time staff members. Oh, actually, now it's 48 because I just joined the staff this month. And sometimes from a small seed, something extraordinary grows. And this brings me to my second story, which really illustrates how UUSC works. This story starts way back with UUSC's work on human rights to water acts. The state of California was one of the places where this work had a win. The California UU Legislative Ministry worked as part of a coalition to pass one of the first human rights to waters acts in the country in 2012. Were some of you part of that campaign? If you were, would you just raise a hand? Many of you might have been around for that. Yeah, at least I see some nods. You might have at least heard about it or been part of it in some way. So in that process, UUSC learned a lot and made deep connections with the environmental climate justice movement. And from that emerged a focus that no one had heard much about at that time: climate forced displacement. UUSC published an early report on the importance of funding communities facing climate forced displacement, establishing a role in that movement. So then in 2018, UUSC funded, along with some support from the Climate Justice Resiliency Fund, the first ever convening of Indigenous climate justice activists. It was held in Anchorage, Alaska, and UUSC brought partners there from all over the Pacific, Alaska, the state of Washington, and the tribes in southern Louisiana that were so impacted by the rising waters there, and also Bangladesh. So the grassroots partners set the agenda. They shared stories of what they were facing, their triumphs and heartbreaks, and they created a framework for how governments should support communities facing displacement with dignity and self-determination. Fiji has actually adopted and embraced this framework as the country manages the displacement of people from rising seawater, though they're challenged to live into it fully. But the framework's existence is shaping the global conversation and is a testament to the power of this kind of convening that UUSC makes possible. So as a result of this convening, UUSC deepened relationships with communities in the Pacific. And from those relationships, UUSC connected with the Pacific Island students fighting climate change. This was a group of law students with a bold idea. So literally as a class assignment, they had created a plan of global advocacy through the United Nations, calling for a vote of the General Assembly to ask the International Court of Justice to make a ruling on climate and accountability. There's never been any kind of statement addressing accountability for all that has been lost as corporations and nations gain more and more wealth from the destruction of the climate. So this is an amazing story. They were literally 24-year-olds in law school with a dream of going to the United Nations. UUSC went all in on supporting them, though they weren't really sure it was going to work. But when the students got to the United Nations and made their demands, it was a brilliant reminder of the adage to never underestimate a small group of people to make a difference. In an unprecedented move, the UN General Assembly, by consensus, unanimously asked the highest court in the world to take up climate change and accountability. At the International Court of Justice, usually oral hearings are dry and arcane, but not this time. They had 4 speaking slots for the Pacific young people to speak directly to the panel of judges. And throughout this whole campaign, the young people had been amazing storytellers. It was a powerful example of centering the experience of the people most affected by the issue. The testimony and their proceedings are on the UUSC website if you'd like just to really be inspired some afternoon. You could take a look. A year ago, they had what UUSC's global strategist, Mayuri Anapundi, called a massive win. When the court rendered their opinion, she said it blew past all expectations. The court not only said there was a right to a clean and healthy environment for all people, but that there was an obligation under multiple bodies of law, not just the Paris Agreement, but under human rights law, to protect the climate system. When you fail to protect the climate system, they said it triggers an obligation to pay reparations. This is a transformative concept for climate law. The opinion also addressed climate forced displacement, saying countries must not return people to a country where there is a substantial risk to their lives. They even called out fossil fuel production, consumption, subsidies, and exploration licenses as actions that failed to protect the climate system. It is an advisory opinion and therefore non-binding, but it's basically judges explaining what they think the binding legal obligations of nation states are. And it has the potential to seed a wave of litigation around the world and in individual countries to be more ambitious in their climate action. UUSC's funding got the Pacific Island students fighting climate change started and helped them get into rooms with bigger funders and bigger allies. The students had all the strategy and understanding they needed, but they needed UUSC to partner and act in solidarity, from research assistance to advocacy support from UUSC members to the United Nations, to making a key connection with a nation-state champion, Vanuatu, from the beginning, and finding them housing in New York when they were there doing the UN organizing. So sometimes from a seed of justice, there is real success and change. So this brings me to my third story, the one that includes you. Wherever you are on your UU journey, there's a place for you to be part of the success story that is UUSC. We're a small denomination in terms of numbers, but not in terms of impact. I know you are already doing so much already, and I'm grateful for you for standing with UUSC and having me here today as your speaker, and I hope that more of you will join us. To those of you who are already supporting us, thank you. Our success is because of you. And whether or not you are a current member, I want you all to be confident, to trust, to know that this organization is doing amazing things in the name of Unitarian Universalism, and you are part of that. UUSC is funded by its members, not by the UUA, and it doesn't seek or accept government funds, which allows them, particularly right now, to act with independence and courage. That's why we can support partners like Pink Haven, which is relocating trans people out of dangerous states here in the United States, or the School of America's Watch in Tucson. There are many more stories of the amazing work of UUSC's partners on their website, and I promise you, we are building movements that will outlast any US administration. My invitation to you today is to consider joining your story with that of UUSC by becoming a member. With an annual gift of any amount made by sending a check or through the website, you become a member. With a gift of $150, the UU congregation in Shelter Rock will match your gift, so it becomes $300. With a gift of $5,000, you become part of their stewardship circle. With any contribution of any size, it helps. Little bits from UUs all over the country is what makes this work possible. It's definitely a situation of many hands making the work possible. I'm so grateful that your offering today here will be shared with UUSC. Thank you so much. For the past 3 years, I've given UUSC $1,000 each year. I do it not because I have to, but because I trust this organization to use our combined resources with integrity and in alignment with our values. I do it both as resistance to the human rights violations here and around the world that break my heart every day, and in honor of a dream that someday we will live in a world where everyone's human rights are respected, in a global commonwealth of humanity in balance with the earth. May it be so. Amen.